All right, hello everyone. Welcome to our lecture today. As you may have heard, John is sitting in on lecture. Say hi to John if you miss him. Hi, John. Um, so yeah, I've already got things started on recording. um, so we will hop right into it. The first thing that I would like to go over is going to be the spread operator. And if your brains are not too full from that, it will also talk about deconstructuring. Sound good? After that, we're going to hop into the React props and state lab. And I'm going to go through it. Chances are within this hour, we'll only get to about half of it before lunch. And then we'll do the other half after I come back from my team meeting. Probably around like 3, I think is what I put on the schedule. So let's see how far we get. Before I hop into it, are there any questions from the labs that you have?
I think if we could maybe review the information flow one.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can totally do that. That will be a big part of what we go over in lecture today with this particular lab. So, got it.
Nice.
Awesome. Any other questions? All right, I'm gonna turn off my camera now to keep my computer from crashing per the normal. By the way, I tried cutting my own hair. It turned out okay, I think. So leave feedback. What do you think? Is it good? Is it bad? I don't know. Maybe I should just wear hats.
Looks good.
Thanks.
Good.
Thanks. I appreciate it. All right.
Good job.
Let's hop into code. I'll share my screen. I'm gonna do this, and then I'll share that. And I'm going to move y'all's faces. I'm gonna minimize this. I'm gonna put this over here. Okay, cool. So, the spread operator. I just wanted to review this since it is super useful when copying state and updating our state. So, you went over this during mod 3, but that was a while ago, so it might be a good idea just to go over it again and kind of re-familiarize yourself with it and all the things it can do. So, the spread operator can do a couple different things. And as a whole, it's kind of all around the same thing. But if you break it up into these parts, it might be easier to kind of understand and comprehend. So, the first thing that it does is it flattens an array. So, what I mean by that is, let's define an array here. Flatten array. And if I have a nested array, I'll make this a little bigger, such as this. Let's do rows, the cat. If we have a nested array like this, and we wanted this array to be combined and there only be one array, and we wanted to flatten it, we can use the spread operator like this. This would spread out the things in this array and put it into this nested array out here. So what that looks like is this. See, no longer nested, right? Whereas a cat is now in a single array, which works and is pretty cool. Can work for a couple things, maybe some algorithm problems you might have in the future. The next thing that it can do is copy arrays. Now, it may seem kind of weird, like why would we do this? But the reason that it's important for us to be able to copy arrays is because of the way that assigning variables work in JavaScript. So, if I have an array here, 1, 2, 3, and I make another variable, and I reference this array from this variable, and I change something in our reference here. Let's say if I change in the 0 position, in the first position of this array, I'm going to change 1 to a string of 1. When I look at my original array and my copy array, you're going to notice something a little interesting. Console.log original array. You may have found this in some of your projects, some of your labs when you're trying to make copies of arrays or other variables. But if I do this, if I assign this position to something, it will change this original array, because this is technically a reference to that. It is pointing all the way back up to this. So this is then affected by anything that happens to this. But if we use a spread operator, oops, let me keep this separate. We're going to use 4, 5, 6, and then let or copy we use a spread operator, we reference this array. This makes a copy of that array. So then if we change something in this array, let's see, we had 4, so we'll do 4 in a string here. If we console log these arrays now,
line 16 needs an O.
Thank you. There we go. This is 0. There we go. Now our copy is the only one that's changed. Our original array is not mutated in any way. We just changed the copy that we made here. So with our rule for not mutating state, making a copy of state and allows us to be able to mutate and change that copy without changing the original state. And that's one of the reasons why this comes in handy. Now, let's try this with a couple other things. We can also concat arrays with the spread operator. So if we have a couple different arrays, and this is going to be a string, likes to eat plants. We're going to make a little story here. There are 2 rows, the cat, that are 3. I have a pet. Now, I'm going to combine all of these with the spread operator. Dot, 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 R3. Now, the important thing when combining things with the spread operator is that you need to remember to put in a comma. What this is doing is this is spreading everything out from every array into its own argument. So if you're doing multiple ones, you have to separate them by a comma or their own elements. So this is essentially like taking everything in here and putting it in here. So if you want to put something after it, you need to put this last comma because you don't have a last comma in here. So R2, and then R3, R1. And we will console log story. I'm going to comment these out so we don't get too much going on. Go. Now we have an array. I have a pet, Rose. The cat likes to eat plants. So that's my story. It's a great story. It's the one I talk about every day. So we were able to take these 3 arrays and combine them into one array. If I had missed this part, we would have gone in error, this comma. So if you see something like this, this just means that you need to add your comma before the item that you're adding to this array. Now, I won't go over too much math, but I'll go over one math thing. You can use the spread operator for some math functions. for things like math.max and math.min. So if you want to do, let's do math.min. I'm going to make an array called minmath. Put this up a little more. And this is going to have a 0, we'll do a -4, and 5, and 4. So if anyone remembers what math.min does, is it takes an array, or it takes some arguments, and it finds the minimum number from those arguments. So if we use a spread operator with min max, with this, we will be able to find 4. So let's take a look at what this actually looks like without it first. Console. We'll do in math. We'll do math.min, like this. If we try to just pass an array in here, we should get a not a number error. So because this isn't a number, because these aren't individual arguments, we can't pass this array. If we passed individual arguments, we would get the minimum number. So if I would like to pass this array instead of these arguments, I need to use the spread operator, which will then take everything out of the array essentially. So it will spread it out as arguments into math.min. So this we'll do this and this functionally do the same thing. So coming from that, we can actually take any array and pass it as an argument with the spread operator. So I'm going to define an array called months. We'll do March, April, May, and I'm going to make a function. I like this. And that function is going to print everything in this array. But more specifically, print these arguments, M1, M2, M3. And we'll console log M1, M2, M3. If I call this and I try to pass it months, it's not going to be too happy. Well, it won't error out at least. But if I want to print everything in here, I can use the spread operator, and it takes everything in this array and passes it as an argument here. Now, we've worked a lot with arrays, but when we're working with state, we're working with a lot of objects. So how can we utilize this when working with objects in state? Well, the spread operator works very similarly when we're working with objects. So if we have some objects, there you go. We'll have my info, a role, I'm an instructor, and we'll do pet, because that's what I have down there. If I take this and I want to combine it into one array, I can just use the spread operator. Let's actually change this to all info. And I can spread everything from these objects. So I can do spread 1, and then I can add this object here. Pet rows, not eggs. If I console log this, let's see what we get. Well, come out months. Now we have all of these objects into one, or combined into one because of the spread operator. Now, one thing that's interesting, and you should note, and we kind of utilized this ability the other day with our form, is if you have objects with the same attribute names, then when you combine them, the most recent object that you put in, that you copied in, that you spread in, will overwrite anything of the same name. So here, I have name as instructor now. It overwrote X here. So when we were using this for our forms, every time we had information that existed from another form input, and it already existed in our form state, it overwrote that original form state that it had when put in the new one. When we put in or used an input that wasn't already in state, it made a completely new piece of state. So that is what we were doing with that. All right. This is a lot. It's very not something you're used to. What questions do you have about this before I move on to something else?
Can you explain that last point one more time?
So this one here, because again, this is the one that we used yesterday, right? So if I have, let's change this back to role. If I have object.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was confused why it overrode name, but I didn't notice that you changed that. Okay.
Yeah. I'll actually do it like this. I'll change this to Hal. And I'll change this to beans. So it kind of makes more sense. So you can see both. And we're going to change this to info 3, info 4, info 2, 2, 3. I'm going to give this to you later so you have it for reference. So this first one, this took every single attribute, combined it together. The second one, because I already had name in here, because I copied X in here with name, since Hal is also name, Hal overwrote X. Does that make sense now? Or
yeah.
Okay, cool.
Totally.
You were saying that with yesterday we were overwriting?
Yes. So if you remember yesterday, we had our form input, right? And on change, every time we typed into an input, if that attribute did not exist inside of our state, it would create a new one, whether it was like name, book, date, time, whatever. But if that attribute did exist inside of state, it overwrote it and put in the updated information. So that way, while we were typing, every time we typed a new thing, it would update state. It would see something like, if we're updating our name, it would see name exists, and it would overwrite name with the new information from our input.
Gotcha. Okay.
Cool. All right. How full are your brains from this? Can I show you one more thing before hopping into the lab?
Sorry.
Yeah, go on.
What about like nested objects?
So nested objects, in their kind of, I have an actual good example for a nested object when we start our lab. Is it all right if I show you with a more practical example with state how that will end up working?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay. Cool.
Share more.
Okay. So the last thing I want to talk about is destructuring. So Hal mentioned this a little bit yesterday, and again, you probably went over this in Mod 3, but it's been a while. So destructuring is our ability to take from objects specifically. When we destructure an object, we can take our information from our object and put it into specific variables based off the attributes and properties in our object. So what I mean by that is I can define, that's not const, something like this, and I can take our name, role, and pet, and I can assign an object to this, and it will destructure our object into these variables. So if I assign x to this, and then I console log name, role, I did that double O thing, console, and pet. Let's comment out these so they're not confusing. Let me grab make this go away too. By destructuring this, by doing this line and then assigning it an object, it took everything from X and it put it into these variable names. I can do the same thing with Hal. Now you see Hal did the same thing.
Does the order matter?
Let's take a look. I was just about to do an example of that, actually. So, name, role instructor, beans. What if the object doesn't exist? What if I do, I don't know, food? And let's get rid of role altogether. Would it matter? We have beans. Now what happens if we try to put food here, though? Undefined. So, if the attribute or parameter, if the attribute does not actually exist in the object, like food does not exist in either X or Hal, nothing will be assigned to it. It has to match something that's in here. So that's why name and pet can both have strings attached to it, but food does not exist in either of these, so food is undefined.
So to destructure, they have to be in curly braces though, because like if you just put const name equals Hal, like that would just make a point, like a variable for the object that you defined up there, right?
Let's try. Let's see what happens. Sounds like exactly what you said.
Okay.
Now let's try just doing name and nothing else. If we have the curlies and we just do name, we're just pulling out the name and nothing else. So, make sense? Any questions?
Cool, yeah.
Cool.
Kind of missed it. Did you say order matter or no? Like if you just did pet and not name and food?
So, we'll do roll again and roll here. So, the order for this is name, role, pet. And in here we have name, pet, role. Because of the way that this works, because this lines up with the actual things in our object, it will assign the relevant term to the relevant variable name. So it doesn't matter the order, as long as it exists in here. So role is still instructor here.
Okay, thanks.
Is there a shorthand way to just assign all the keys to variables?
This kind of is the shorthand way.
Okay. So you have to know what each key is in order to do it.
I'm trying to think. Off the top of my head, I don't know one. This is generally how I do it. But to my understanding, you generally do have to know the keys. Since John's here, John, have you ever seen a shorthand way to do this?
You're talking specifically about, excuse me, you're talking specifically about ways to combine variables into a nested object.
So kind of with destructuring too, is there a shorter way to do this where I can kind of in here put something so I don't have to put every single attribute name, or do I always have to put every single attribute name? Because this is the only way I've known how to do it.
No, because those are different. Yeah, because those are different data points. Mm-hmm. You have to state exactly which data you want in there. And on line 72, when you're constructing that object when you're extracting those values out of HAL, part of the deal with destructuring is that you're selecting from that list. You could try. What would be interesting would be on line 72. I don't know if this actually works, but instead of name pet HAL, maybe try the spread operator with HAL and see if it'll drop all the properties of HAL into that spot. I don't know if that's going to work though.
Let's see. Doesn't look like it, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's trying to. Yeah.
What if you did like a spread operator with like object keys? How would that work?
It might, since it returns.
I would be suspicious, but we could try it.
Yeah.
Typically the use case for this is that you are going in and you're finding you've got an object or you've got some data structure that has a large amount of information in it, and you're trying to get access to select and limited points from that information. There's a lot of cases where you're getting every single one and you're doing this for convention so that you can access them via one variable, but I don't. I have only really ever seen it the way that X has currently got it written there.
Would it matter if the const took off, was taken off for the last?
No, you're declaring new variables there called name, pet, and role. So you're declaring new things, and they're going to be equal to their equivalent value within the object called HAL.
Okay.
Cool. Thank you so much, John. Yeah, if you want to, might make an interesting blog topic to dive into this and see if you can find a more dynamic way to do this, but this is all I know, and sounds like John hasn't seen another way. Doesn't mean he doesn't exist, but like this is what we're both used to seeing, so cool. But again, might be an interesting blog topic if you find an answer or talk about your journey to try to find that answer. So, all right. Okay, so give me a fist of 5 on how you were feeling about the spread operator and deconstructuring. Like 5 being like, I'm awesome, 1 being like, I don't know what happened. Okay, cool, I'm seeing some good numbers. All right. In that case, I'll go ahead and send this to you on Slack after lecture. And you can go ahead and play around with it, make a fork of it, and I would invite you to try your own things. So for every single one of these, just go ahead and try spreading your own array, flattening your own array, copying arrays, and then especially playing around with the object one. But for right now, let's hop into our lab and see how far we can get on that. So this is the lab for React, props, and state events all put together. Did anyone get a chance to read this or look through it?
Yes.
Cool. Awesome. So the first thing I kind of want to do is kind of glance at the README and break down what the things I should do in this lab before we start. To kind of get an idea of what the lab is asking for and what we should build. As I'm building this out, a lot of this should be review, hopefully, and it's okay if it's not and you didn't completely get specific things, but I will be asking for volunteers to maybe navigate me through parts. So if you know a particular section really well, let me know, and we can have you navigate me through that. If none of this has stuck in the last 2 days, that's okay too. I can build out as much of this as we need. So once we are done with this lecture, and if we have to continue it, maybe the lecture afterwards, I would recommend that you try doing this before looking at the video again. And this is something John actually suggested in one of his cohorts, to do this lab without reference to what we've gone over, and then kind of check your work. If you get stuck, if you can't remember what we did, that video will always be there for you to reference, but trying to take what you learned from this experience and put into action might help some of these ideas gel a little better. We also have John's videos posted in Slack if mine take too long to upload, as they often do, but they're there for reference. So, we are going to be building an animal shelter. So, they have given us a couple different things. I've already run npm start, or npmi and npm start. We have our React app up here. I have my React components open for my dev tools. And this is what we have on our page so far. This find pets, which doesn't do anything, this filter thing, which has some stuff on here, and this heading. So let's take a look at what they actually want us to do. Let's see, there are several components that need your attention. These components can be found in our component folder. So looking here, it looks like we have app, filter, pets, and pet browser. So the app's initial state is already defined. The app has two children, the filter and the pet browser components. So let's take a look at app. This is the initial state. It looks like we already have this. Now, I have been using the newer version of this where we just define state and do like state equals blah, 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 blah. But you've probably seen this. This is kind of this is the older version that they used for defining state. What super does for us is it allows us to reference our parent components, so React component here, and it gives us the ability to use this .state. If this confuses you, you can always just use the original or the state assignment that I showed you, but it's a good idea to get used to working with code that you didn't write in general, or code that might be legacy or older, so you know what it does and you can work with it. When you're making your own new things, you can always define things however you want or feel comfortable.
Can you show us the way that you're doing it again? Because I got used to doing it this way and I forgot the other one.
So the other way was I would do something like state, and then it would essentially, instead of having this, you would just have all of this in here.
Okay.
And doing it that way, we like really don't even need a constructor unless we need to like pass some props through it or something.
Yeah, you don't need to. Well, if you're defining state, you shouldn't need to pass in props. Because you're normally defining state in a class component, so you have access to state through this. So if you're using a constructor like this, and if you're using super, you need to use these both together. But otherwise, if you're using the other way, you don't need them.
Cool.
Cool. All right, so we have good questions. We have app, and then we have these two components it's bringing in. It has the filters and the pet browser. Cool. Confirmed. Let's go ahead and I'm gonna open this in a preview so it looks better. Oh, I'm happy I did that. Sorry, that's cute. Okay, so where were we? Okay, yeah. The initial states are defined. We have two children. App should pass a callback prop on change type to filters. This callback needs to update app state to .filters type. Well, I see filters type is type of all, so I'm assuming that that means when we update our state, we're either going to be updating it to, cat or dog. So when that updates, we can update it from all or to cat or do the same thing for dog. I forget that it does that. Finally, set app state.pets with the result. of your fetch request, you can pass down data as props to pet browser. So, oh, I'm in the wrong spot. That made no sense. Keep going. This is where we were. Filters needs a callback prop. On find pets click, when the filters component calls on find pets click, app should fetch a list of pets using fetch. Okay, so what I'm hearing from that is that I'm just gonna stay on here. I always forget that double clicking does that. There we go. What I'm hearing is that this on find pets click needs to be in filter, but there needs to be something in app that we're passing down that triggers this fetch. So let's take a look at filter real fast. So filter has this pets button. So this is going to be the thing that triggers our pets callback on find pets. I'm going to actually grab this. I'm going to go into this button and I'm going to assign this to an on click. I'm going to pass this here, but I'm going to define this in this function. I'm going to need some curly braces. I'm going to define this up here. And now, thinking about what my README wants, about app doing this fetch, I'm going to need to go to app and I'm going to need to build something that this triggers. So in app, I'm going to build a function called fetch all pets. Right now, I'm just going to console.log the word pets. Can anyone tell me how the heck do I get fetch all pets into filter?
You pass it as prop.
Cool, I like it. So in filter, we're going to call a name fetch all pets. And we are going to pass it like this with the this keyword. Now notice, remember, we're not invoking this here, we're just passing this down. And inside of filter, how do I access it now? How do I grab it?
Props.this.pets.
Awesome. This.props dot fetch all pets. Now here I'm going to invoke this because when this fires, I want this to fire. So let's go ahead and give that a try now. Let's look at our console. Find all pets. We're getting our console log. Awesome. All right.
What is on find pets click? Where did you define?
We defined
find
that
a pet?
right here.
Oh, okay.
And we put it on this click. So this was from in our README when they specifically stated, where did we put that? Right here. Filters needs a callback prop on find pets click, where the filter component will call this fetch when it's on app. So that's where I got this.
Gotcha.
Cool. So that being said, it has been a long time since I've been in Mod 3. This needs to fetch something. Can someone help me build out a fetch? Just a normal. Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. What do I do?
What's in the? So where's the data coming from? That's what I want to know first.
That's a great question. Let's check our README. So where are we talking about our fetches here? Looks like we're talking about it here. The URL of the API is API/pets. So this is a little weird, and I'll talk about why. So this lab is specifically giving us pets from here. And so this is like some mock data. So we are pretending that this is a actual database right now. So don't worry that much about like why this doesn't have an actual like domain name or anything like that, or isn't referencing like localhost or whatever. We can just pass in API pets as our URL.
Okay.
Sound good?
Yeah.
Cool. So
since it's just API pets, it's not like we have to give it the actual path.
So this is what the actual path is going to be because of the way that the data is being sent to us in the lab. So the API pets is going to be the thing that grabs all of the pets.
In this situation, would we want to... oh, never mind. I actually just need to see the other page again.
Cool. So in this case, I'll go ahead and put the URL up here in comments so you can see it for a second. Okay, what do?
All right, so we're gonna write fetch.
Okay.
And in the parentheses, we're gonna put that URL.
Awesome. Let's just do a copy of it. Cool. What next?
Now we can, I think we do our .thin.
I love it.
Response.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can console log response.
Okay.
Well, I mean, yes, but we could also just go ahead and, response.json.
Perfect. But I like the idea of console logging it though. So let's console log it here. Okay. So let's go ahead and take a look and hit this button. And it looks like we have an array of all of our pets here. Awesome. Great. So
cool.
Now that we have that back, now that we have everything that we fetched, let's see what we're supposed to do with it. Yeah?
How were you able to console log all that without throwing anything in parentheses after console log?
Oh, so this might be a syntax you haven't seen before then. So this is equivalent to doing data, and I'll leave it like this so it's less confusing. So you can pass this then console log, and it will console log anything that's coming down without having to define the callback like this. But it's a little confusing. Sorry about that. I will console log it like this so it just makes more sense and is more readable. Cool.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Okay. So for after our fetch, we are going to need to I'm looking. Use the app state filters to control these parameters. I'm not sure where it says that we need to set this to a state, but I'm like 99% sure that we set it to state. So what is the method that we use to set out to put things inside the state? What is the method that we use for that?
Set state?
Yep.
You tried so hard not to say it.
I'm so good at doing that too. I'm just like, I'm gonna be vague about it, and I say exactly what the thing's called, and I'm like, that did not work as planned. So we have a couple parameters in here. Let's go, which parameter do we want to set our data to? Do we want to set it to filters? Type?
Pets.
Pets. That sounds like a good plan. All right. Object. Awesome. So we don't see anything here, but we can go into our components. We can look inside of our app, and inside of our app state, we have all our pets now. Cool. So we set everything correctly to state. Now, this is relatively easy because we don't have anything in state yet. But I'm going to show you a practical example of using the spread operator. if we had something inside our state, say this object that I wrote, let me uncomment it. We had a pre-existing object, maybe because we've added this object a couple times, maybe we already have a ton of objects in here, maybe it came hard-coded like this, but we have something in here. If we try to set state with our pet data with this, if we did this, and we find our pets, can I make this bigger? I guess not. It will override everything I have in there. So rows will disappear and will not, and it will override it with everything that's inside of this array, which works for what we're doing. But if it didn't, if I did have this pet in here that I didn't want to be overrid, I can use the spread operator to save the integrity of that pet while adding my data to this. I can do that by using the spread operator and doing ... copying everything inside of this .state.pets. So it will access everything that's inside of here and spread it out through this array. And then, comma, grabbing everything from data, which is also an array, and spreading everything in data into here. So that if we call this now, and we look at pets, the first pet is still rows. So I'm going to cover that one more time because this is likely how you're going to see this the most. If we have inside of our array something that exists, we need to grab the things from that array. We need to spread out those things into a new array. That's why I have this array here, nesting in here. And then we need to, comma, add in our new data. And our new data is also an array. So I'm going to spread everything from our new data array into this new array.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
If you, so it doesn't matter the order that you write these spread expressions?
So there's something, I forgot what it's called. It's not the spread, but it's if you write it before and you're putting things in before items, what is that term? Let me Google it real fast. But it essentially does the same thing, but prepends everything, right? Spread operator. Normally has liked things sometimes under here. Also, the rest parameter? I think it might be rest. I think that's what the other one is, where it puts things in like that. But, sorry, what was your question again regarding this?
My question was if we had put ... data before spread this dot.
Does the order
state.
of that matter? I think that this would just put it in front of that is basically what the idea of the rest operator does. So if we do that again, we open this. At the very bottom, we still have rows.
Gotcha.
Cool.
And then my next question is, it seemed like it automatically handled the indexing.
So the indexing, well, it's because this is an array. So remember what's happening here is that this is taking items from two arrays and they are just putting them in the order that we're putting them in here, kind of in that array. So they're kind of like shoving them all together. So it takes an item out of the array, puts it in the next most available spot sort of thing. So that's what's happening.
Cool.
Cool.
Thanks.
Yeah.
X.
Yeah.
Before, when we just did data, it like indexed it already, right?
Yeah. Well, data.
Why did?
Go on.
Oh, so why did we need to use the spread in this case?
In this case,
before we didn't.
Yeah. So in this case, we need it as a spread because we wanted to save rows here. If we just did data here, which is what we're going to go back to doing because this is what we want normally for this lab, it will overwrite rows altogether. I have to hit find again. There we go. So rows is no longer here. prove Rose is also not at the bottom. This overwrote Rose altogether. So this data, if you remember our console log, was an array of pets. It's taking that array of pets and it is replacing whatever was here. So it doesn't matter if this was an empty array, it doesn't matter if this was a string, it's replacing what was ever at the key of pets with what data is. So if I replace this with a string that's like data, and I do find pets again, pets is now data, right? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Cool. Awesome.
Really quick, Ix, you're sending fetch all pets to filters as a prop from app, right?
Correct. So
Okay.
yeah, it's just going from here down to here.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other questions about the spread operator before we move on?
Don't forget to fix your data string.
Exactly. Good reminder. Data. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and remove this now because for our purposes for this lab, we actually want the data to be overwritten. Just because every time we filter, we want to replace all the data that was in pets. So this is the best solution for that, since we don't need to keep the integrity of pets in any way. So this is just going to work, and this is why we don't need the spread in this particular case. That being said, in order to get our pets to appear on screen, we are going to need to do something. Now, I would normally hop back and forth between my README, but we're running a little low on time, and I know what we need to do, so I'm just going to kind of walk through those steps. So we need to get our data into pets eventually. And to get to pets, we originally go to pets browser, which then calls our pet components and passes all our data into pets. So let's take that a step at a time. How do I get my pets now, my state pets, into my pet browser?
Gotta pass them down as props.
Love it. So pets is equal to this.state.pets. Now, why did I not need to do .state here? Why did I not need to do .state.fetch pets? But I used .state here.
This fetch all pets isn't in state, it's just like a
Exactly.
instance method.
Exactly. Fetch all is not in state, it's an instance method that's right here. So we don't need to use .state. We use .state when we're accessing anything that's just in state. So inside of pet browser, we now have access to all that data. We can click and check here, and it looks like we have pets, but we have to fetch first. When we fetch,
If you just did fetch all pets in there, would that do the same thing?
So if we did fetch all pets in there, we don't have access to state, right? Our state is stored in our app. If we try to do fetch all pets inside of pet browser, we don't have access to the state that we want to update, right? So we want to do it inside of here and then pass it down.
Okay.
Cool.
Yep.
Awesome. So now that we have everything inside of our pet browser, which we have confirmed with our React Dev tools, how do I get everything into our pet component, which we've defined here?
All the pet component inside the UI cards too.
Okay, so something like this. Okay.
And then we gotta tell it what kind of props it's expecting.
Okay. Okay. Anything else? How are we getting every single...
We're going to have to build a map, a helper function essentially above that builds a map to map each pet within the pets hash or array into a pet card.
I like it. Did our README give us a name for what that might be? I don't think it did. So we're going to call
Render pet.
Render pet. There we go.
Or pets, I guess. It's neutral.
Awesome. And then inside of here, we're going to do a map from this
props.pets.map, and then you're going to map pet to the actual pet object. I don't know what it's specifically called, but
I think you're right.
yeah. And then you're going to pass pet, and then you're also going to pass adopt a pet or adopt pet. I don't think we've gotten to there though. So
I think that adopt a pet is, it's a good point to bring up, is a attribute inside of our pet. So I think that this gets passed down every time we pass the pet down itself.
Adopt a pet, it's something later on in the README. It's never mind.
I'll check
it's
it out.
for flipping it to true.
Okay, that makes sense.
But that's something later.
We also want to give them a key.
I like it. What should we use for the key?
Index, but then we need to also tell it that it's going to expect the index, or we could use the name.
Ooh, I like either of those. But sometimes animals can have the same name, but we have a unique property of ID. So the index works, the name would work in this case, but let's go ahead and use the pet ID since we know that all those are going to be unique. Sound good? Cool. Awesome. I like this. So this is a nice one-liner. It's clean. We're rendering anything in here, but now I made that, but why is it not populating on the page, y'all?
Because you're not rendering them.
Oh, right. I have to render them down here. Let's invoke this. Cool. Oh no, what happened? Was I supposed to
return?
Oh, we don't need to return. So, well, actually we do need to invoke this, but
Oh, we need to go into the actual pet file, right?
Actually, let me take a look at this 1 second. We should. The one-liner should do our return for us, is what it should be. Normally you'd be right. Normally, if this was a multi-line function, and it was broken up like this, and it's a good thing to bring that up. So if this was like this, actually, this isn't a complete one-line function. You're right. So you're talking about this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is it. This is definitely what the thing is. I need this curly brace to go away. And that did make it appear on the page. What I was trying to do, and I got a little too ahead of myself doing this, is if we do this. It should do the same thing in an ideal world. Oh yeah, I gotta get rid of these. There we go. There. So it does the same thing. It's essentially the same thing as doing, and I'll have one comment out, render pets, and doing it on multiple lines. We did this, and then we mapped through it. We would need to return our map, because we need to render the map, the items that we mapped. And then we could even do this on multiple lines. And then return this. So these two essentially do the same thing. I'm missing a thing here, but one is one line, one is multiple line. Either one works. Cool. All right, taking a quick look at this, we have our cards rendering, but we're missing the information in our cards. So inside of our pet card, this is the last thing we'll do before we go to lunch. How do I get my pet's information in here?
We need to do, wait, can we look at the console? Okay, so in the pets, and it's the props. So yeah, we need to do this dot props dot whichever data we're trying to target, and put that in curlies.
Good call. Awesome.
So it should just be pet. Correct.
Well, right now.
Or are we passing it as pets?
So I think we're passing it as pets because that name came up correctly. So yeah, we're passing it as pets here. But we can change it to pet because that makes more sense. And so we'll change it to the pet here just for accuracy. And now we have the name. Fantastic. Great job. So I'm going to bring back to structuring here. So we have all of these variables or all these attributes. So writing this.props. Blah, 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 blah 8 times is not ideal for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to utilize destructuring. I'm going to use a const. I'm going to put this object here. And for name, age, weight, what other things do we have? Is adopted, type, gender. Adopted, type, gender. I'm going to assign this to this.props.pets.
So does this like sacrifice some space complexity for the sake of
making
like
it a little bit shorter and easier to read as far as computational power, you mean?
Yeah, exactly.
So
should it be this.props.pet?
Yeah. You're right. There we go. It needs to be inside of the render for us to do that. There we go. So this will destructure and assign everything to this. I think that does take more computational power because it's a reference, but I'm not sure. I don't think that it is enough that it wouldn't be worth doing it. John, what do you think? Other John, teacher John. Is he still here?
I am totally still here. I was filling out an email for David. Can you repeat the question?
So as far as computing power and far as memory, does this take more stress on our computer?
No, you're creating references to those values.
It's just because it's the
creating
pointing.
new information.
Okay. Well, I guess that is a no. It doesn't matter. So always do this. It's fun. Makes life easier.
Yeah, it's for readability and re-accessing it. That way you don't have to type it out a ton.
Yay.
Cool, thank you.
Cool.
Now we can just do that.
Yep.
That's,
I love it.
oh, sorry, y'all.
All good. And then age. And then we'll do weight. All right, let's take a look. And that is everything with an extra curly brace. Now, there is some things that we will need to do, but I'm going to save those for after lunch. Here, we have to do a true or false to, or do some conditional rendering to decide whether or not we're going to render this symbol or this symbol. And we also do need to do some conditional rendering to decide if we are displaying this button or this button. But I'm going to save that for after lunch since we're already over. And bring this to an end for right now. So you're going to eat. So, all right. Any questions before we head to lunch?